So as you were just notified, this webinar is being recorded, and I will share a little bit more on that in just a moment. I am going to start with some housekeeping items. Alrighty. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Your Hour with APA Virginia is held the fourth Monday of each month, and it's generously sponsored by the Berkeley Group. This month, we're glad to have our friends over at DRPT with us, Taylor Holden, Janet Meneva, and Grace Stankus. Taylor should be joining us shortly, but if not, we will go ahead and get started. I will note that the CM number is listed here. I will also put that in the chat box, along with the link to our YouTube page where you can find previously recorded webinars in the series and this one in the next couple of days. This is also where our website, I will link that in the chat also. You can find upcoming webinar opportunities within the Your Hour series and within the Mid-Atlantic Planning Collaboration series. And I will also do a quick plug for our conference in Williamsburg in July. Early bird registration is closing in just a couple of weeks. I will share some links to registration and other information in the chat as well. Just some logistical items. We really do encourage questions, but please submit your questions through the Q&A box as opposed to the chat box. This will just help us keep track of all inquiries. You can also use the raise hand feature to request to be unmuted if you'd prefer to ask your question out loud. There's Taylor. There will be some poll questions. Whoops, sorry about that. There will be some poll questions where polls will populate on your screen, but those are pretty straightforward. If you have any logistical questions, feel free to DM me in the chat. But otherwise, I think we're all set. I'm going to stop sharing, hand over sharing capabilities to our presenters, and thank you everybody for joining.
Perfect. Thank y'all. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Is that good? Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. Excellent. Thank you, Jillian. Yes, so this is visualizing rail data and transit data, and DRPT overview of data and tools. And we are going to be in particular looking at our new open data portal and 6-year improvement plan interactive. And Grace, are you leading this part?
Yes, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm Grace Stankus, a statewide transit planner at DRPT, and I am joined by my colleagues in DRPT's rail division, Taylor Holden, a rail planning and data manager, and Janet Meneva, a rail programs data specialist. In today's webinar, we are going to cover DRPT's role in transportation, the 6-year improvement program, a timeline of DRPT's data visualization tools, an overview of DRPT's open data portal, and then finally we will wrap up with a live demo of the open data portal. Okay, Taylor, next slide, please. And just before we begin, we wanted to start off with a question to get a feel for who we have in the audience. So which stakeholder group fits you best? Are you part of a local government, state government, federal government, or private company?
Alrighty, that should be up for everybody right now.
Okay. So it looks like a majority work for local government, 22% work for private, and a little bit of state and federal. Okay.
Nice.
So who are we at DRPT? We are a state agency focused on moving people and goods by rail, public transportation, which I will refer to as transit throughout this presentation, and commuter services. DRPT does this by providing support for projects and programs, by allocating state and federal funding, conducting statewide rail and transit studies, planning and programming new services and capital improvement projects, and providing leadership, advocacy, technical assistance, and funding oversight to our partners. Taylor, next slide, please. And so through the various DRPT programs, the agency supports 40 transit systems, 80 human service providers, which provide transportation to seniors and people with disabilities, 17 transportation demand management agencies, 15 metropolitan planning organizations or MPOs, 9 short line railroads, 2 Class 1 freight railroads, 1 intercity passenger rail operator, Amtrak, and then 1 DRPT supported intercity bus, which is the Virginia Breeze. Slide, please. Okay. And so to provide a little bit more detail, I'm just going to quickly run through some of the ways that DRPT provides support to our stakeholders through our rail and transit programs. I'm going to start off with rail. And with the creation of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority a couple years ago, DRPT's rail focus has shifted primarily to freight and the movement of goods. There are 3 rail programs: FREIGHT, which is an acronym, I'm not quite sure what it stands for, state funds, which provide state funding to increase capacity and improve the functionality of Virginia's freight rail network, the Rail Preservation Fund, state funds to continue state of good repair projects for short line railroads, and the Rail Industrial Access Program, which provides state funding to construct railroad tracks for new or expanding industrial and commercial business. And so these 3 programs provide support to the 9 short line and 2 Class 1 railroads, along with businesses throughout Virginia. Okay, next slide, please. And then some of the transit programs through the Making Efficient and Responsible Investments in Transit, the MERIT program, DRPT provides capital operating and special programs funding to support the 40 transit agencies and 82 human service providers in Virginia with a combination of state and federal money. And then you'll see we also provide an annual allocation to WMATA and VRE to support the capital and operating needs for these systems. And then we also coordinate with FTA on formula and discretionary funding programs with the 5307 program for our urban providers, 5310 for human service providers, 5311 for rural agencies, and then 5303 and 5304 for statewide planning money.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just point out, when I joined DRPT, it was an interesting thing that WMATA and VRE were technically on the transit side rather than rail. But there's, that's kind of one of the differentiations in just how we operate. And, Virginia's got several agencies layered doing these things. And so that's why Metro and VRE are on the transit side, but we still partner with them on various things as well from the rail side.
Okay. And so a little bit about the 6-year improvement program. All of the programs that I just went over that provide funding for rail and transit end up culminating into DRPT's 6-year improvement program. which is the Commonwealth's joint annual funding allocation program for the programs and initiatives that DRPT and VDOT administer. So essentially, it's just DRPT's annual budget for funding and supporting rail and public transportation programs. And I would say creating the SYIP is probably the most collaborative thing that we do as an agency. It's really an all hands on deck effort that impacts probably everyone that works here. And I included this development schedule just to provide a little bit more background into our process for creating the SYIP. Even though it kind of is a year-round process, it really begins on December 1st when the application period opens, and that is open for 2 months until February 1st, where all applications need to be in, and then we will begin the application evaluation process. And that's where DRPT staff review kind of a back and forth with the agencies to make sure we got everything squared away, and we do the scoring and make our recommendations for funding through February and March. And all that kind of culminates in April with the draft SYIP, which we present to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, typically in mid-April. And then throughout April and into May and June, VDOT and DRPT host a series of public hearings throughout the state where there's an opportunity for public comment to just kind of provide input on the projects that are recommended for funding. And then finally, last week actually, the final CTB was presented, or the final SYIP was presented to the Commonwealth Transportation Board and was approved. And so that has kind of wrapped up the process for this year, where funding will be then available to the awarded grantees July 1st.
So we're getting all the contracts out right now.
And so over the past few years, data has become a lot more important in the SYIP development process, starting with the operating assistance formula, which distributes state operating funds based on a performance-based methodology. And to kind of gather this data, we collect ridership, revenue hours, and revenue miles and passenger miles traveled on a monthly basis. And this has kind of like enhancing this data collection has really expanded upon what is possible to calculate and just kind of make available to the public with this data. And then similarly on the rail side, applications are also evaluated using a scoring matrix along with a benefit cost analysis. And so the rail side collects annual carload data, estimated future throughput data, tonnage, and trip length. And so since these allocations are based on these performance metrics, accuracy and reliability are important. And these policy and programmatic changes have really created an incentive to improve upon DRPT's data collection, review, and management process. And kind of bringing it back to the open data portal, like this data that we've started to collect over the past few years have really made a lot of the data products on the open data portal possible. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Janet to talk more about the history of DRPT's data visualization tools and products available to the public.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Grace, for that overview. Taylor, would you? Yes, thank you. To the history of DRPT's data visualization tools. So I just want to roll back the clock a little bit so we can talk about how we've arrived at this newest iteration of the SYIP. As we know, over the last decade, especially, the Commonwealth has taken to heart the idea of data transparency to better connect with the public. So as we've started collecting more and more data online, integrating with more web tools, web apps, we've been collecting not only more data, but more data has been available to be used to analyze and to review. And we just want to share that with the public. So data is quickly becoming more and more accessible to the public as well. In 2020, we contracted Tyler Technologies to build our open data portal on their Socrata platform for the 6-year improvement plan or program. which allowed it to be viewed online and be clickable in both like a tabular and a map element for the projects. And we would partner with them on a yearly or monthly basis as things needed to be updated and changed around. So you could do a very basic filtering and other data manipulation options, but still it had that intermediary of partnering with a consultant to do that work. And as we expanded on it each year, in 2022, we added more plans as we expanded our programs at DRPT. So the Transit Asset Management Plan, or the TAM, summary and data dashboard was added on. They were really great partners for adding on more pages and more accessible options for us. We also built out the 2022 Virginia statewide rail plan, and that was actually done in a different platform, ArcGIS Online, which we're going to get to, which was really great. That was another great partnership effort with another consultant group. And then also in-house, Grace and Taylor and I have been working pretty hard on also including the performance data aspects. So what happens after a program or a project is closed out, or as the project is ongoing, what information are we gathering from that as well. And then most recently this year, we are able to launch our new open data portal, reimagined and developed in-house. We use ArcGIS Online, which, as you saw, we had experience with that from the previous years. And then we also were able to incorporate Power BI to create some flashier charts and graphs. So it's evolved and grown over the years, and we're very excited to show you the newest iteration of it and to give you a little sneak peek of some ideas and thoughts on where we're going to move forward with.
I just want to throw out there the Virginia State Rail Plan was kind of the first, as far as we know, fully digital rail plan that was fully built in ArcGIS Online, and we got great reviews from the FRA, who we have to submit the plan to, and really it was kind of it was great that our leadership was willing to take that chance to do something so innovative and new. And it was because we had already been working with this software and data for quite a while. So they were kind of comfortable and felt that it was going to be the future of DRPT. And we wanted to look to the future.
Yeah, and so now we want to just push that idea back onto you and see, how do you interact with data the most? Do you prefer to download and manipulate it in a separate software on your own? Or do you like when there's an in-house web app that you can manipulate directly in a browser? Maybe a little combination of both. And if there's something else out there that you've been doing with your data, please let us know in your chat, or even just talk yourself up of how what cool things you've been doing. So let us know.
And that poll should be on everyone's screens right now. I'll wait for it to get to about 80% participation in the poll. Alrighty.
Okay. Oh, I love seeing those results. Yeah, both is so great to see, because I think you'll see in our demo very shortly that we've tried to incorporate both options to allow whatever type of data user you are, that you have like the type of data that you are comfortable with, and to be able to play around with it how you so please. So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I use both. I like having a quick tool that I can look something up. And then I like being able to have, all my tools available to dig into it and that sort of thing. Oh, and here we are for the open data portal elements. And so now we're kind of entering into the demo portion. So I'll kind of get out of the PowerPoint after this and we'll jump around. But so these are kind of the major elements of our open data portal. So we've got these performance measures that Grace and Janet talked about. That's, the data we collect from our grantees about, how they're doing, how our projects are, that sort of thing. The 2025 Six-Year Improvement Plan, the SYIP, which is really, it was the impetus for us to kind of make this leap fully to ArcGIS. We kind of decided that that was going to be the platform we wanted to use. And it's, the core of what DRPT does, I would say. And then, so the geospatial data portal, y'all are probably familiar with that. Most state agencies have some sort of place where you can download the specifically geospatial data. And so we actually had that on ArcGIS before we kind of pushed everything onto the same platform together. Data stories, that's a new thing that we actually just launched this month from our communications team, where they take an element of one of the pieces of data that we collect, and they're sort of doing a whole story about it. And so those get blasted out. You can subscribe to them and sort of get them sent to your email. And it's a really nice digest of, this is the data we collect, this is why, and these are the trends, this is what's happening. And that's been a really great partnership with our communications team, who I will shout out was very helpful in all of the designing of all of the open data portal. We've got a great brand that we're all very proud of. And they made it very easy for us to kind of take that and add it into our area of expertise, being GIS. The Smart Scale dashboard, that was also something that existed kind of prior to this year, but wasn't as fully usable. It was a little clunky, but so, Smart Scale is one of the Commonwealth's big programs for distributing transportation funds that localities can apply to. And so we manage a Smart Scale dashboard of all of the transit primary projects. VDOT has a separate dashboard with all of the road-based projects, and so we maintain our own with the transit-based projects, and that's largely to show progress and how they're coming along. That's really the focus of that one. DRPT financial reports. As we said, people like to have the data, so there's giant PDFs and Excels that you can download with all of the actual budget information that's, feeding into our systems. And then strategic plan progress, that's something that, once we were leaning in on putting as much as we could available to the public, we had a new strategic plan. We started in 2022, I want to say. And so we've got specific metrics and goals and then metrics that we want to accomplish. And so get updated, throughout the year is the goal. Previously, it would just be a static web page where we might say, this is what we did. But now I think that gets a quarterly update. All right, and we've got a question before I jump into the demo to maybe help me tailor things a little bit more. So what type of data do you search for most? GIS data or like tabular data, Excel, CSV?
Alrighty.
Love to see that. Big GIS nerd here. So that checks out. So about 73%, so 3/4 probably, mostly look for GIS data, and then tabular data, which, GIS data includes tabular data as well. But having it in that format is very useful and makes sense. So this is a screenshot of the DRPT Open Data Portal. If you go to our main website, you'll see that it's kind of right at the top there in the top right next to resources. Our communications team once again helped us put it in a nice prominent place. And I believe now it is time for me to head there. Cool. So you can always subscribe to DRPT's stuff. I'll put that plug in there as well. So you can get the latest and greatest from us. But this is the Open Data Portal. Each of these pieces is built in ArcGIS Online or Power BI. And we had one iteration where kind of everything lived in a ArcGIS Online Open Data Portal. However, we decided that we wanted it to also live within our website. So we instead kind of embedded each of those pieces in our website. And so you can still link out to them and find them all on their individual way, but you can also interact with them within our website, which was something that was very important to our communications team, and also provided some IT advantages, synergies. So this is the landing page, VRE. It's a great combination of transit and rail. And we'll start with our performance measures. So we've got several dashboards here about our different performance measures. I'm going to pull these up separately, but Virginia Breeze is an intercity bus service that we actually operate as an agency. It's largely based in Southwest Virginia to kind of fill gaps in the network of like where Megabus, Greyhound, and Amtrak don't really operate. And so we collect a lot of data from them. And kind of this is the performance data dashboard. So, we've got kind of an informational piece here about like, this is the program. We've got a nice map that also shows, this is where we're going and that sort of thing. And then we collect route level ridership. So on our 4 different routes, and we get this monthly, particularly since we're the operators. We have a contract with Dillon Transportation, who's Megabus, but we get all this data regularly. You can filter it and see, based on the different routes and months, so that sort of thing, or based on the year, and you've got your routes and months there. So you can see, monthly ridership for one specific route, if that's what you're looking for, kind of filter very specifically. We've also got stop level ridership. So you're able to choose, departure and destination. So if you want to do those origin destination sort of studies or, look at that sort of thing, you can really kind of drill down, and once again, monthly and yearly as filters. The Valley Flyer was our first bus, and it has still proven to be very much the most popular. And it largely connects a lot of college campuses that don't have access to other transportation means. And then on-time performance. So this is another dashboard where you can see, on-time performance for your various the various routes. This is a big thing. You'll see that we collect for other transit agencies as well. And OTP, especially for rail, is a big thing for project or for all that. You can set your filters here, you can clear your filters, all that sort of stuff. And we tried to provide information throughout to kind of explain what each page is doing. And these are actually built in Power BI. So the performance data is largely in Power BI, and you'll see the SYIP and the other stuff are in ArcGIS Online. And we went back and forth quite a bit trying to figure out, should we keep it all in one platform, or is it better to, choose the right tool for the job, which we chose to use Power BI for these sorts of things. So returning back to the Open Data Portal, now we're going to look at the Six-Year Improvement Program, which is kind of the, I'd say, the most robust of all the data we collect, and that sort of thing. So, we've got an informational landing page here. Here's where you can download the data as well. But I am going to go ahead and push it into the full screen so we can get the full experience. And so once again, this was built using ArcGIS Online. And hopefully this is going to load. Yep, so we've got a landing page here that kind of, explains what is the SYIP, why is it important, how do we go about it. So that's, that graphic kind of showing the cadence of how we develop it throughout the year. And then we've also got a general summary of, this is the top level stuff, this is what we're investing in. So that's the overview. You'll notice that we've got, a summary, and then we have rail and transit. So those are kind of separated, and we'll get to them in a second. We also included a SYIP glossary here. So lots of acronyms, lots of different terms, that sort of thing. So we felt it was important to sort of give people that option of like, what does this mean? What is this phrase they keep using? So that was one of the later additions. So this is the overview. And then here you can see the actual allocations. So this is, what we're actually loading. And of course, it doesn't want to load. Doing a live demo, that's always the risk. So we got that out of the way early. And so these are, what we're actually investing in. So, almost $1 billion in transit, 18 million in rail. And then you'll see VPRA, the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, their funding flows through us. But we kind of birthed them as a new agency back in 2020/2021, when the Commonwealth did their big Transforming Rail in Virginia project, which you can read all about on our website or theirs. But so that's kind of where our SYIP is kind of constructed, with the transit rail and then this pass-through money that goes to VPRA. And they obviously do their own reporting on their budget and that sort of thing, and have a great GIS team that's also keeping things interactive and making data available. So these are the allocations. So this is, you can see here, operating assistance, like Grace talked about, that's for most of our transit agencies. And then you have more capital assistance and investing in capital projects. As she mentioned, a lot of that is formula funding in terms of what we give out and what we have available. But this kind of just gives you that large overview. And then, of course, you're able to filter and select if you need. But largely, this is kind of just this is the summary page. Likewise, the revenues show kind of where the money comes from. And this is filterable. So for instance, I'm more familiar with the rail funds. And so you can see that, the Commonwealth Rail Fund is where we get the bulk of our money. And then there are other funds available as well. And so that just kind of takes you through the sources, federal funds. So this is, some of that pass-through money that on the transit side that comes from Federal Transit Administration. And then we, use our grant process to kind of determine the allocations throughout the Commonwealth. So you can look at that and get the information there. And then reconciliation, this is a page that we just had to include. It's more of like an accounting of like, oh, this is, from last year's SYIP, these are where things changed, unobligated balances and stuff like that. As Janet said, this is probably, or I think Grace, this is probably, one of the most collaborative processes that we go through at DRPT. And so, things like this, that finance is like, oh no, this is really important. This has to be included. We are able to make it happen. And so they're not as interactive because they're just kind of like, oh, this is the amount. But now we can get to more of the fun stuff, the projects we fund. So rail and transit, I'll take you through each of these as well. So a landing page on each, where we really wanted to kind of explain like, all right, what are all these programs we have? What is the different purpose of it? That sort of thing. So that was why we ended up doing these landing pages for each to really explain like, these are our programs. And then this is the, top level summary of this is how much we give out each year. You'll note it is a 6-year improvement plan. So, it's fiscal year 25 through 30 is what we're looking at here. And so particularly on the rail side, we program out our projects. Almost all of them are multi-year projects. On the transit side, multi-year projects are a little less common, particularly, since like operating, that's, on a yearly basis. And so that was one of the challenges that we ran into was, okay, how do we build this data set so that, all of these different project types can speak to each other? And so that was a big, when we decided to take on this initiative, it was, well, we need to make sure that everything can fit together if possible. And, then we can filter from there. And so breaking down the different funding sources over the years was a big goal of ours. So here's the map. So you can see a summary. So in rail this year, we have 67 projects that have been funded. You can see the yearly total, and then kind of like the full project total as well. And then we also wanted to break it down and show this is the local private match, since, match percentages are very important. We want to be good stewards of the Commonwealth's money and that sort of thing. So then you can hide that page. And you've got the map here. And so here you have a list of all the projects that we have funded. And if you click on one, it should zoom you to it. It's just highlighting it right now, but things like to be clunky. And so this agricultural capacity freight program, you've got the total amounts here over the total project costs. And then we've got a pie chart kind of showing. So this one was a 50-50 project. And then this is kind of what I was talking about with we wanted to input a table here that shows, all right, this is the breakdown of the funds from various years. This is not the best example since it is a 1-year project and 50-50, but if you go back out and, choose something like this, you'll see a different split in terms of years. Here's a better example of it being a little more complex, and all that sort of thing. And so you've got the project list there. You can search by project name. So, if you want to find out like, oh, what's all the Winchester
Oh, am I the only one who seems to have lost Taylor?
we can do Winchester and Western as just an example and hit apply. And seems like my connection acted up. Hopefully y'all didn't miss too much.
No, and I will say, Taylor, sometimes it helps. I know we want to see your face as well, but sometimes when doing demonstrations like this, it does help if you just share your audio as opposed to video as well.
Great call. I will switch that off. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, so that filters down the number of projects. It also filters the summary. So you're able to see, oh, we've got 8 projects with Winchester and Western, and it filters down this list view here. And then, so that's kind of the map viewer that we have. And then there's the tabular view. And so the filter works on it as well. So, I'd need to reset this filter here if I wanted to see all the tabular projects. Oh no, it's really acting up on me now. But here's the tabular view, and we'll jump over to transit and sort of, they've got the same thing going on. Very specifically, we wanted to kind of try to make it the same between the different sides. And so for transit, we've got 97 different projects and the summaries there. You're able to see them on the map. Since they were just most of them are 1-year projects, we went ahead and decided to kind of include the funding breakdown as part of the preview here. But then, once you click on the details, you get something similar where it zooms you in, and then you're able to see the specific funding over the years for the project. One of the big things that we want to add is kind of a quality of life improvement moving forward is state understanding of project scope. So we want to have a little description of this is what this project does and that sort of thing. But for right now, we really just needed to get the data out there and available to people, was kind of our goal. And then, so here you've got the tabular view and what that looks like. So you're able to see all the attribute information for these projects. There we go. There's all of them. And, so you're able to see project cost, all that sort of thing, which district it's in, and then which funding source it's actually coming from, including the federal source, which is, especially on the transit side, we have that pass-through funding. So being able to provide that is very important. For all these, you can reset the filters at that top button. That's what I should have been doing the whole time. And then you can also show and hide columns. So you'll see here, we've got a lot more data than we're actually showing because we wanted it to kind of be like, oh, particularly on the transit side, they don't have that many projects that are multi-year. However, if you do find one, you're able to kind of turn those on and see how the breakdown is over the years. And then this is the big thing. All of this data you can export. And so you've got the option for JSON, CSV, or GeoJSON. So basically that's how you can download these tables. You can also directly download the GIS files of these, which for transit, they're all point projects. And for rail, they are all line projects. Another GIS nerd thing that we spent a lot of time debating how to share them. And so also if you filter things, you're able to, only download the filtered and it'll kind of give you that number. So that's a good way to, you might not want all the data at once, you might just want to pull down a certain list. And so that is the kind of meat and potatoes of this, the SYIP. And I am going to quickly go through the other couple applications that we have and then try to leave time for questions. These are the data stories that I mentioned that are kind of, it's a partnership with our communications team. So we've got 2 out here, hopefully we covered everything that's in this SYIP data story, but if you want to check it out, you can obviously do that. And they're published kind of through our communications CRM software. So that's why they're a little bit of a different thing, but they pull from all this data that we collect and make available. The geospatial data portal, as I said earlier, that's probably something that a lot of you are familiar with in terms of, it's opendata.arcgis.com. So, VDOT has their Virginia roads, DEQ, DEM all have their kind of portals like this. And so, this is not dated at this point, but it's an older version of, we had this before the whole open data portal, but we wanted to keep it up because it's important to be able to give people who are searching for GIS data kind of that one-stop shop for where they want to go. And so we highlight some of our major applications and web maps, that sort of thing, and then you can click on transit data or rail data and download our official layers. One of the big things that Grace does is maintain our GTFS data for all of our transit agencies, and that's like every month it's the most viewed piece of data. So lots of people use it, and it's an important service we provide to our partners. And that's, all the routes and stops and that sort of thing. And then on the rail side, we've got crossings, we've got the actual rail layers, rails to trails, passenger stations, all that sort of stuff. And we're going to be continuing to add more layers to sort of this official layer. And then financial reports. This page just links to our website. It kind of has all those PDFs available for download. So, if you want any multiple years of our budget, quarterly reports, and then the old SYIPs, that's where you would kind of go for that sort of thing. As we do things kind of futuristically, we want to make sure that also people can get access to the data that they're looking for as quickly as possible and like in formats that they might be familiar with as well. Smart scale dashboard, as I mentioned, this more so tracks the funded smart scale projects through their development life cycle. So that's why we've got, this on budget and on schedule sort of filter here, or indicators here. Once again, we've got all the active projects as a list, so you can search through and click them. You can select by smart scale round, recipient, VDOT district, that sort of thing. And then for, once you've selected a project, you can also get this project milestones where you see these are the milestones when they're submitting certain things or hitting certain steps. So that's one of the big things that we do, and VDOT has a very similar application to this that shows progress. And lastly, we've got strategic plan, dashboard. Of course, it wants to go slow now. And so this is kind of, we've got, I think, 4 major goals of what we want to achieve, and that several different sets of metrics that we track and update quarterly. Once again, branded with our DRPT brand. And so you can see the different goals that we have up here, and then the measures that correspond with those goals and our intentions. And then down below, we also included some measure descriptions, just because, a lot of this stuff is like, oh, you say you're on target, but what does that mean? And so we want to make sure that people understand what we're measuring and why. And with that, I think I went 5 minutes over, but I'm happy to stick around for extra question time. But here's our contact info, and let's get to questions.
Well, thank you, Taylor and Janet and Grace. I think that was an incredible presentation. The demo, obviously, I think it's an excellent resource for planners, and also just a fascinating tool to sort of play around with. Just a reminder to our attendees, please submit your questions through the Q&A box as opposed to the chat box. This will just help us keep track of all inquiries. It looks like we did have a question come in that was answered in terms of being able to download spatial files, which I believe you confirmed, Taylor. I have a question. Oh, go ahead if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, so you can download the spatial files, from the GIS Open Data Portal, but then the project-based ones you would download using that export tool in the actual SYIP itself. But you have the option to do it as a spatial file.
Okay. And I guess my question is, are you able, I mean, you had mentioned that, for example, some of the route filters were the most common used tool. Are you able to see the data on the back end? Have you been able to gather information as to what individuals or stakeholders are using this data the most, and where are they coming from, and what are they using it for?
So that's a great question. Yeah, so the ArcGIS platform really only gives us like total views as an option for each piece of content. And so that was actually part of the reason why our communications team wanted us to embed it in the website, because when it's in our website, they're able to use their tools to, see where people are coming from, which pages they interact with most, how long they stay on pages, that sort of thing. So that was actually the limitation of the Esri platform, was kind of part of why we wanted to bake that into our website.
Makes sense. And I mean, I don't want to go too off topic here, but you had mentioned the Transforming Rail project that had occurred a few years back. Can you speak at all a little bit to this project and how it's had an impact on the structure of your work or your work in general?
Yeah, definitely. So it was born out of the DC to RVA high-speed rail NEPA study, which was, a long process late in the 2010s. And really what that culminated in was a massive deal between the Commonwealth and CSX, where we actually purchased half the right-of-way between DC and Richmond, with the goal of separating it for passenger rail and freight operations. And so, as part of that deal, it was determined that, creating an authority similar to the Virginia Port Authority was going to be the best way, logistically to kind of become a construction company and that sort of thing, and build out this additional segments of rail. And so the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority was created kind of as a result of that deal. Their initial staff largely came from DRPT. We still work very closely with them, on a daily basis. However, they really are tasked with building out currently a third track, and then in some places a fourth track between DC and Richmond. And then they also kind of took all the responsibilities of managing the state-supported Amtrak service, which is, Amtrak has long-distance service that they run, and then Virginia has several, I should know off the top of my head, several state-supported services that we provide funding for, and therefore that's why on-time performance and one of those things is data that they collect from Amtrak, because we're paying for this service, for them to run this service, and we want it to be high quality for all Virginians. And then the last piece of that is that it's not just we're not just focused on one part of the state. So with Transforming Rail in Virginia, there was also a second deal with Norfolk Southern to expand passenger rail service from Roanoke to the New River Valley. And the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority is currently renegotiating parts of that deal to get on the main line, and to make it faster and cheaper for us to bring that service online. But yeah, that's the not so quick overview.
No, I appreciate the background. Very helpful. Well, it looks like we don't have any other questions, but maybe one or two might come in as we're doing some closing remarks. But I will add, our presenters obviously have their contact information here, and I will also be sending it out in the follow-up to all attendees. So I know that they're happy to be a resource if you think of anything afterwards or have questions about the portal or the presentation as a whole. But yep, just keep your eyes peeled on your inboxes for that follow-up email, which will include the presentation slide deck, the link to the presentation, and just some other helpful information. I don't know if Grace, Janet, or Taylor have anything else to add at this time, but I want to thank them sincerely for joining us this month.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.